Tonight's webinar is all about herbal approaches to stress and anxiety. We've got a fantastic herbalist, a very experienced herbalist who deals with this on a daily basis in her own clinic, and I'm sure will give you a very good run through of the exact mechanisms of actions, causes, reasons, but ultimately tonight hopefully you'll be leaving with actionable insights and solutions to help you and your loved ones with what is becoming a more and more common illness and symptom in a day-to-day life. We're living very fast-paced lives, and often stress and anxiety can lead to other health conditions and other issues, which I'm sure Natasha will be very pleased in talking you through. So without further ado, I'd like to pass you over to Natasha Lloyd. She's one of our leading herbalists here at Napiers. To give you a bit of background about our clinic, we've been operating since 1860, so over 165 years of herbal expertise. I'm actually stood in the store where we were first founded by Duncan Napier. You can't quite see him, he's on the wall over there looking over us. But everything we do ties back to our herbal roots, all natural solutions to all of life's problems. And as I say, stress and anxiety is absolutely one of the biggest ones that we all face today. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Natasha Lloyd.
Thank you, Arjun. I'm very honoured to be working with Napiers. Their range of products and their system and team are very caring and kind. I'm very honoured that I'm here tonight to be able to present this to you. It's a subject that's very close to my heart. I have dealt with a lot of anxiety in my own life, and herbs have got me through. I'm also menopausal at the moment, so anyone that has any questions about those, I really do know my stuff about that at the moment. So I'll get on with the presentation. So tonight is about the herbal approach to managing stress and anxiety. There are other ways which I've included a little bit in here as well, because it would be remiss to not put as much as I can put in for the length of time that we have tonight. The definitions of stress. So stress is the body's natural response to challenges that impact mental and physical health. And the common symptoms are often irritability, fatigue, difficulty concentrating, and sometimes affecting day-to-day activities. The physical symptoms are often headaches, muscle tension, and other bodily discomfort. Sometimes that you can have, you'll find that you end up peeing a bit more because you're stressed. There's lots of different reasons. Some people have digestive issues that occur. Stress can show up in unusual ways that you don't always expect. What is really the most important aspect of those symptoms is recognizing them as a stress symptom and starting to work with them earlier on, so that we can stop the whole snowball of stress and anxiety coming in. Anxiety, which is one symptom of stress. Some people handle stress and use it as a tool to get through. I have a deadline and therefore I need to make sure that I get to that deadline, and stress can help you get to that point. It's when it starts to become untenable and start to affect your day-to-day life in that way, i.e. if you don't want to go outside, you don't want to get on a bus, you don't want to go in a supermarket, that's when we need to start doing something about it. It's also characterized by feelings of worry, fear, and an unease about daily life. I mean, that's not so easy at the moment. There's a lot going on in the world, and I think we have to recognize that it's not just our day-to-day lives at the issue, it's the bigger world. The world is changing rapidly as well. That doesn't make us as creatures feel very comfortable. Again, change can be a good thing, but often it makes us feel uneasy. Other symptoms can be excessive worrying, restlessness, not being able to actually settle, and an increased heartbeat and trouble sleeping. I'll get on to sleep later. It's the importance of identifying those issues. When did sleep start to become an issue? Do you fall asleep okay but wake up? Or is it the other way around? Do you end up not being able to fall asleep and then can't wake up? Work pressures. So common triggers, causes and triggers are often work-related pressures. We spend a lot of time in a 9-to-5 job, and that's where it can be difficult to switch off. Personal relationships often are very a beautiful thing to have in your life, but sometimes they come with their own stresses and challenges, and family situations as well. As we go through life, changes in family, increase in family size, and as people get older, having to look, wanting to look after your ailing parents or aunts and uncles. Financial concerns. This is something that is, for all of us at the moment, changing rapidly and scarily. So it has to be put into this. And of course, the major life changes such as moving, changing jobs, going to university, leaving home for the first time. And so we're now going to look at the different coping mechanisms for that as well. Obviously, tonight we're going to mainly focus on herbal remedies. Napiers is very herbal centered. So the natural and holistic approach by medical herbalists are the fact that we look at an individual, and that is really quite important, that we make up an individualized, personalized medicine for you. Yes, you can pick something off the shelf and it will help, but when you come and get a consultation and you can get something that's completely bespoke for you, if you pick something that is good for sleep, then that's a great thing. We all need sleep. But if you pick up something that could be for aiding digestion, but your digestion isn't something that's an issue, then you could almost put the balance out. So it's quite important to get an individual one. I'm going to go through a list of herbs and why we use those just very briefly so that you can get an idea. And obviously looking at balanced lifestyle. Working 80 hours a week but not spending enough time with family can be unbalanced. There's all sorts of aspects for that as well.
Natasha, I just wanted to touch on something there, which you mentioned around treating the whole person. Typically, when you have a consultation with someone for the first time, it's usually about an hour long, I think, if I'm not mistaken. And just so people are aware, as a medical herbalist, you're not just asking them direct questions about what they're specifically going through. You're asking them wider questions about their lifestyle and other things that are happening, events, as you mentioned before. So I think that's really important to know. And on different symptom or different illness. My daughter's only around 1 year old, and I was seeing a medical herbalist for her eczema, and she was asking a lot of questions about, person, what's her attitude to play and relaxation and stuff. And so it's not just about, what is the cause of this one illness. It's looking at the whole thing. I find that really interesting, particularly around stress and anxiety, because it isn't going to be just one factor necessarily for a lot of people. As you mentioned, today's world is changing rapidly, and I think part of that is a lot of the cause of people's stress today.
Yeah, thank you for picking me up on that, because I tend to not remember, I don't remember all the basics. I do it on such a regular basis. I forget that, yes, it's each individual consultation is tailored to that individual. There are a backbone of questions, but then that takes you off into a flow diagram of different questions. And it's fascinating. Anyone that's thinking about becoming a herbalist, do it. It's really good fun. Hard work, but fun. Sleep, one of the most important things we have for the nervous system. Very, very important. If you've ever looked into sleep, we don't fully understand why sleep does this, but it gives our time for our brains and our nervous systems to reset. It's a fascinating subject. So the main herbs for me for sleep, every herbalist has their own kind of toolbox of herbs that they're more familiar with than others. But for me, Chamomile's been my savior. And there was a time in my life where I went into burnout, and chamomile tea was my best friend for a very long time. If you're going to pick one to begin with that isn't going to interfere with any other medication, we'll get onto that in a minute, it would be chamomile. Lime flowers really help. They're like a soporific, so one on from a relaxant, so put you into a slight stupor. I have one of those wearing brains that doesn't stop, and lime flowers really tone that down and allow my brain to really relax into sleep. You may well have heard of valerian for sleeping. That works on the GABA receptors and is excellent for sleeping. 10% of people have the opposite effect. So, and in that set of questions in the consultation, I would be asking you questions to see if it would be the right herb for you. Lavender, age-old herb used for relaxing. I can't actually see all my slides here. 2 seconds. Oh, cramp bark. Yes, I've just taken some cramp bark before this seminar because it helps relax your muscles. And again, when you're very tense, and you don't always know that you're tense until you take something that unwinds you. And so crank bark is excellent for relaxing the muscles. And then passion flower is another useful one as well, just to calm everything down. And then what is good sleep? We all say we should get good sleep, but what is that? For most people, it's 8 hours. For a few other people, that can be 6 hours and you can still function. For say like teenagers, that's quite often 10 hours. I mean, I would prefer 10 hours most nights. There isn't enough time to do that. But for me, if I get under 7, I really feel it. But for other people, that's different. So most people, it's 8 hours. Feeling relaxed and refreshed when you wake up. That is important. Is it easy to fall asleep? Do you not wake up in the night? And are you getting enough good deep sleep? We have enough of these biometric watches like the Apple watches and things that can show you how much deep sleep you're getting. And they're actually quite effective to show you how much deep sleep. I'm not necessarily suggesting that you use those, but they can be a way to monitor what's going on. And then, of course, working with the body's natural circadian rhythm, looking at the seasons. At this time of year, we have a lot more sunshine. Well, a lot more sunshine this year, but we have a lot more daylight. And that actually affects how we feel. And then in the winter, we have less. And we often can sleep a lot more in the winter because of that. So working with nature's cycle and being aware of that and how that affects us, and actually being more attuned to what our bodies were kind of evolved from. We weren't necessarily evolved with electric lights and all these aspects. So to be aware of that and to try and keep a good routine and good sleep hygiene. So no electronics about an hour before bed, a darkened room, quiet. And actually a cool bedroom is better than a warm bedroom to help your body sleep.
Natasha, I'm just going to pop you on the spot for a second, if you don't mind, just on that point around using technology. So I personally think it's an excellent tool in addition to lots of other things that you've already mentioned. One of my friends actually had said that their watch had given them more anxiety because they were waking up and they were getting alerts saying that you've only slept 5 hours, and even though they felt good, actually the fact that the watch had told them, you're not back up to your fully recharged state, that was causing them a bit more anxiety. So what they moved to was actually a notepad and pen, so going even more old school and actually just taking a note of how they feel. And I think that's something that herbalists do recommend sometimes. I don't know if that's something that you do in your practice, is to maybe keep a diary of how you're feeling, and that way trends and essentially trends become a bit more easy to spot for yourself rather than having to necessarily rely on technology, which can exacerbate the situation as well.
Yeah, that's why I was very cautious about using that, but I'm aware that that's what some people already use. I agree with you. It's actually better to not necessarily. It just depends on the
convenience is there, isn't it? Absolutely, it's much more convenient, and all the data stored there, and it definitely will work for some people. I think it's good, yeah, a good option for sure.
Yeah, but also the pen and pad. I mean, I've tried to move over to electronic devices for patient notes. I can't do it. I need pen and pad. So yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, how we're so individual and what works for one person doesn't always work for the other. Fascinating. So life events versus burnout. The word burnout is used a lot. I've been in burnout before, and I really investigated, why is this happening? You can imagine, as a herbalist, I'm like, what is going on with my nervous system? So there are big life events like moving house, changing job, weddings, funerals, retirement, all those big aspects, babies being born. Burnout happens when there's a prolonged series of life events, one after the other, where there's not enough time to recover from life's big events. Not everybody goes into burnout. Some people manage to buffer that. It usually turns out to be people that are givers, that give too much and don't know their boundaries very well. Personally, I've got much better at boundary setting, but that's getting into the realms of psychology, and that's not what tonight's about. But it's worth noting, boundaries are important. Trauma and somatics. This is two words that are used quite a lot at the moment. I'm just finishing a course in a whole range of this sort of aspect. Sometimes I feel that trauma is used as a word too much, but then other people would say that it's not used enough. Basically, trauma is when stress gets held in the body and it doesn't get released. And somatics, very simply, somatics is when coming out of your head into the thinking aspect, into your body. So going for a walk, dancing around the living room to your favorite music, All sorts of things can be somatic. So I'm just bringing that down to basics so that you can understand the differences between the two. Sort of social media has really picked these two words up, and they're not as complex as they seem. So back to kind of the herbal aspect of it in some respects, in terms of the way the body works. Sorry. So fight or flight is when we would be thousands of years ago being chased by a tiger, and we needed to get out of that situation really quickly. That's a really good thing to have, really important when there's a tiger running after you. But we can end up having that as something that we have just when the front door goes or an ambulance goes past the house. That's when it's starting to get into too much fight or flight. It has kept us alive, but when you get stuck in that kind of fight or flight survival mode, that's when you really need to kind of look for some help to move back into rest and relax. Very, very simply, going back into rest and relax. I mean, there's lots of neurochemicals about this, but I didn't want to put this in today. If you come for a consultation, we could look at that more deeply, and any of the herbalists in Napiers can do that for you. It's sleep and napping. A lot of people perceive napping as lazy. It's really not. When you're in fight or flight, you need to be able to nap as well and not be worried about getting your nervous system back to where it should be. Doing things that make you feel good, reading a book, going for a walk in nature, meditation, yoga, playing. We forget as adults that we need to play as well. Just something light-hearted. Turn off the news, turn off all the stressors, and just go and play, and just do something very simple. Go and play in the puddles when it rains next, whenever that may be. Good nutrition is really important as well, making sure that you have, we all know what a good diet is. Sometimes you need extra supplementation like magnesium or B vitamins are particularly good for the nervous system and well worth putting in. Iron can often cause, low iron can cause issues as well with the nervous system. Self-care, making sure that we look after ourselves and our environment. And then, of course, I'm going to put herbal medicine at the bottom there as well.
And Natasha, on the fight or flight feeling that people get, what are some of the symptoms, if people may not necessarily identify it themselves, what can they look out for next time something happens where they may be in that situation? Is it things like increased heart rate, brain fog perhaps? I don't know what kind of symptoms that they may get during an episode of fight or flight.
So normally with the nervous system, when it's going into too much fight, where it kind of gets stuck in fight or flight, that can be palpitations. It can be extra trips to the toilet because your nervous system in your gut is moving your peristalsis, your transit time too fast, i.e. diarrhea. So if you get lots of having to go to the toilet or even going for a pee, it can be headaches. For me, it's personally, it's when sound becomes too close, too loud. I get like a sound dysmorphia. And if my front door goes, then I'm like, whoa, okay, what's going on? That sort of aspect where that's disproportionate to the actual situation. I should be happy the door is going. Who's at my door? Let's enjoy it. But I'm just like, oh no, it really is individual.
Brilliant. No, that's really helpful to know, just as a few pointers that people may look out for.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the Q&A. I've just put a few herbs in the slides, and then I'm going to go through quite a few on the fourth slide for this. So reducing chamomile is exceptionally well known for reducing anxiety, and it's a very, very good way of achieving a sense of calm. I mean, a cup of tea of chamomile is also very comforting. Just a cup of tea that doesn't have chamomile in, that ritual aspect of making that tea for yourself, that's self-care, that's ritual. It's taking time out for you. Obviously, chamomile promotes sleep as well and makes you feel more relaxed. And it can also help with digestive issues. So, it's hitting a few things at once for the whole nervous system there. Just the smell of lavender. The lavender essential oil has lots of science behind how it works. So does chamomile. And yeah, it's known for keeping so with smell, it goes straight into the brain. There is your nervous system is right at the top of your nose when it comes to smell, and it's very useful. It improves sleep, and it helps reduce anxiety. Then one that a lot of people would have already heard about, ashwagandha. In its Latin, it's Withania somnifera, which gives you a clue as to what it does. It's a somnifera in terms of its sedating. It helps. Ashwagandha is known as a adaptogen. I've got a little slide about adaptogens. It also helps reduce cortisol levels. And then it also helps improve mood. I didn't want to get too deep into this because this is just a general overview. Okay, so a list of stress-reducing herbs. I'll go through them very quickly, one by one. Passion flower has a very relaxing aspect. Tulsi helps regulate blood sugar levels. Blood sugar levels are often known to go a bit wild when we get stuck in fight or flight and become more sensitive to them. So if we can regulate that, it's a really good thing to be able to do. Magnesium also does that. That's partly why it helps with stress. Skullcap has a very long history of being able to help. Its very name, skullcap, just to kind of help the brain reduce the extra thoughts that are going on. It just calms that down. Hawthorn works on the heart. It helps regulate the heart rhythm, and it works on the nervous system in being able to help manage palpitations. But there's also an anxiety that comes from those extra palpitations physiologically. And so if we can regulate the heart rate with hawthorn, then we can start to reduce the anxiety from that. Valerian, again, working on the GABA receptors, very well known as an anti-antilytic. The cramp bark by muscle relaxant. Peppermint, simple peppermint tea is a mild relaxant. It's also very cooling to the body. We're getting into different aspects here, but that helps. If there's any inflammation, it will help with that. Pretty much every herb is anti-inflammatory, but peppermint has that extra ability. Oats, being in Scotland, obviously oats have been a very historical aspect and also shown to be a mild antidepressant, partly from its B vitamin content. Very, very useful. Licorice. Licorice is used as helping with cortisol regulation and with adrenal fatigue. Very, very useful. Hops are known for help to sleep. They're actually estrogenic, so if there's any hormone issues, they will really help with that. Melissa is lemon balm, very relaxing, very, very comforting. Schisandra, five flavored berry, has a lot of, how do I explain that? That would take a lot longer than I have right now. Motherwort is kind of similar to hawthorn in that it helps with the heart, but it also helps regulate the nervous system in different ways as well. Californian poppy has very mild opiates in it and can help sedate slightly. St. John's wort get asked a lot about. That has mild antidepressant flavors, mild antidepressant effect, and also works on digestion. That was one of its original uses. And catnip is particularly useful for children as an anti-anxiety. So you can see all the herbs have very slightly different ways to get to the same place, but that's why we have individual consultations, so we can choose the right one for you at the right dose. Okay, so how do you take your herbs? Now we can use herbal teas. As I mentioned earlier, they're often very soothing. They're very culturally something that we've had for a very long time, and the ritualistic aspect. The herbal teas work very effectively, but they're only extracting in water. Tinctures have been used for a very long time and are used with alcohol and water. So there's two extracts there. That's primarily why we have them as our main preference, because the two extracts. When it comes to herbal capsules, although they are extremely convenient and very good for compliance, they can only contain a small amount. I did a whole thing last week of what is the best way to get the herbs into you. With herbal capsules, they're about 1 ml per capsule. And as you'll see when we come to dosages, most dosages are about 15 ml for a tincture. So that would mean 15 capsules a day to get the same effect.
Natasha, that's really interesting to hear. And one of the things which that kind of triggered in my mind was around the differences between pharmaceuticals and herbal medicine as well. So my background is chemistry, so we would always try to isolate the active single molecule from whichever plant, for example, and then use that as a medicine. But the great thing I think with herbal medicine that I've learned now is actually you don't necessarily want to just extract that one active. You want the whole plant, because all of those components work together. Even the inactive components and compounds are helping with the whole activity of that one sedative, for example, that is in the valerian. You're getting the whole plant part. Is that something that you kind of tend to agree with? Comes more in the tincture form versus the capsules, or is it kind of all the same between the three different methods of taking a herb?
Of course, the herbal capsules are just the powdered form of the plant, so you're only getting one extract. That's why most herbalists prefer tinctures. It's quite an interesting one, Arjun, with that, because if you look at aspirin, which came from meadowsweet and willow bark, as an isolated compound, as acetylsalicylic acid, that is quite often, it's a great painkiller, analgesic, but it can sometimes cause an ulcer for some people. But meadowsweet, the whole plant, is a anti-inflammatory. So aspirin has some anti-inflammatory, but not much, but it's mainly a COX-2 inhibitor, and meadowsweet is a COX-1 inhibitor, so therefore is more anti-inflammatory, but it's used to heal an ulcer. Because we don't know all the components around that yet, but we know that those components buffer and allow the salicylic acid in the meadowsweet to do its job without the side effects. It's probably the easiest way to put that.
That's a fantastic example, and one that absolutely everyone will be able to understand. So thank you very much.
Oh no, I also just want to say, like, something like foxglove, digitoxin, digitalis, is quite toxic, and herbalists used to use it, and it slows the heart rate down. But digoxin, the medication, the isolated compound, is way safer because the therapeutic window is so narrow with foxglove that you can end up killing someone. So never take foxglove leaves. So there is a case for both. Saying that, herbs and interactions are really important. Somebody put a question about this, and I was really glad to see that. Herbalists are trained in orthodox medicine and herbs, and we know how they work, why they work on both counts. So that was great that we talked about that before, and we could get into that detail there, Arjun. Thank you for doing that. And we always check in very good databases like the Natural Medicine Database, which is updated regularly. Otherwise, we would have to spend hours looking up all the new research. So someone does that in a database and then updates the interactions. And we always check on every consultation when someone's on orthodox medicine to make sure it's not interacting with the herbs. So safety is paramount.
And Natasha, just to jump in again, on that very good list of herbs that you had gone through earlier, would you recommend people kind of hold off from just going ahead and buying them if they are on medication? It's best to always speak to a herbalist, or as you mentioned, chamomile is very well tolerated alongside medication. Are there others from that list that you would say fine to take with medication, or is it again just best to speak to a herbalist?
Very interesting. The next part of this slide is St. John's wort. And as I was talking about that earlier, I wanted to say this actually affects the way the liver assimilate. What's the right word? The way the liver works with the drugs. And it can interfere or even potentiate other drugs or stop them working. So for most, if you're wanting to take St. John's wort, it's better not to do it with medication, or certainly if you're on medication, you want to seek out a herbalist before you take herbs. But St. John's wort is the one that most people know can interfere. I mean, it can interfere with the pill. It interferes with so many other aspects. And then somebody asked a question about tamoxifen. You would not be using it with estrogenic herbs like red clover or hops, which increase your level of estrogen. So there's phytoestrogen in red clover and hops. So you do not want to be giving that alongside tamoxifen. And pregnancy and breastfeeding, we're really careful. You certainly wouldn't give yarrow, which is a uterine tonic, when you're pregnant. And of course, anything that you're giving to the mother with breastfeeding is coming through as well. So just to give that aspect of safety and some reassurance that we are very well trained in this and take it very seriously. So then we get on to doses. It's different for everyone, hence the personalized medicine. I'm not going to reiterate that again, otherwise it sounds like we're just kind of doing that. It is very important. But most adults is around 15 millimeters of tincture a day. That can change depending on what needs to be done. Sometimes I'll take 15 ml before I go to sleep if I've had a really stressful day, or 5 ml of chamomile, 5 ml of cramp bark, and 5 ml of lime flowers. So that's a lot in one go, but everyone's different. Then for children, we use the Dillings formula and the Young's formula to make sure that the right amount is being used, and that those are calculations for age and for body weight as well. And then for the elderly, we need to look at how many other medications are happening. And as metabolism changes as we get older, quite often goes down. What's digestion like? Has there been any damage in the digestion? What do we need to look at there? Herbal doses can vary significantly, as we've just said, and it's crucial to consult a healthcare professional, i.e. a herbalist. Okay, adaptogens and mushroom for stress and anxiety. A lot of people know ashwagandha, but it's a relaxing ginseng and an adaptogen, and it balances hormones. Again, dosages depend on the person. You know, things are different for a teenager going through puberty to a woman going through menopause, for a man going through the andropause. And then Ganoderma, reishi mushroom, it balances blood sugar levels and is antihistamine, as well as balancing hormones, is anti-anxiety, it increases gut flora, helps with immune system function, does a lot of things. Very similar to Tulsi, but if you're allergic to mushrooms, then you can take Tulsi instead. And it was actually used, I was fascinating when I was doing some research for today. It was actually used to help prepare the mind for meditation. So therefore it must be calming the mind down and getting you prepared to really just gently focus on what you're doing in meditation. It's also strongly anti-inflammatory as well. Rhodiola, which is our native kind of ginseng, if you like, our adaptogen. Not all adaptogens are ginsengs and not all ginsengs are adaptogens. Rhodiola is very gently stimulating and can be used for things like ADHD and ADD. So it's an interesting one. So someone asked about adaptogen sensitivity. Is usually the wrong adaptogen used for that person and the wrong dose. You do get people that are very sensitive to things. There's nothing wrong with that. That's just the way their body works. But often that sensitivity or that the wrong plant has been given for the wrong person. Very quickly, we'll go through perimenopause and menopause. So it is when life for a woman, when the changes of hormones happen before your periods stop, it can then be very much peaks and troughs of the different hormones, and we need to make those balanced. And those peaks and troughs can cause a lot of anxiety and changes. Just the changes can cause the anxiety in terms of what's happening with my body. So having someone to talk to really helps that. Being aware that it's happening to other women. I mean, I think we're more aware of it these days than we were 20 years ago. It's certainly talked about a lot more. That's also about cortisol regulation. As the hormones change, the cortisol becomes more sensitive, is a fair enough word. And then we need to look at cortisol regulation. And then herbs for hormonal balance. You will have access to these slides afterwards. So native Scottish herbs for stress and anxiety I thought was important. That for me would be hawthorn, yarrow, rhodiola, pineapple mayweed, which you'll find growing out and about. It's in the same family as chamomile. And it actually tastes of pineapple. It's delicious. And then lime flowers again, and heartsease, which is a little tiny viola. It's beautiful. Homemade versus commercial products. Yeah, I used to make a lot of my own medicines, and now I'm very appreciative of the quality and energy and time and the fact that the herbalists have made the formulas for Napier's. I'm not just being a Napier's girl. They are genuinely very good quality, and I know a lot of the herbalists that have made these formulas, and I really trust them. And Napier's also regularly consult with us as well as to, is this still good? Could we change this? Can we adapt this and make this better? So with homemade medicines and creams and things like that, it's about as fresh as you can get, which is a real benefit. You know exactly what's in it. The cons of that is it's time consuming, depending on where you're at with your journey of learning. It's new learning. There's a lot to learn to make these things, and you can make possible mistakes with dosages. So for commercial products, they are quick and convenient, literally off the shelf, buy, go home, or on the internet. There are regulations for quality and safety that are very stringent and strict. Because there's been some new laws, 2008, that made creams and cosmetics that were very strict now. The Napier's formulas are made by herbalists. Unfortunately, there's a lot of disreputable companies that will just take your money and run. And for some products, they're a long time on the shelf. Teas, particularly for me, are a bit of a bugbear. If you're buying your tea from a supermarket, how long has it been on that shelf for before it even got to the shelf? Yeah, and then so the efficacy of the aromatic oils have gone, and you're not going to get the same effect as if you were to get it from a reputable company. I'm a forager as well as a herbalist, and foraging is really good for your mind because you go outside. It takes you away from the to-do list, and you can go out to nature, and that really helps settle you. You've got a purpose when you go out when you're foraging, and you'll watch the butterfly go by, and that's really good for your brain. The very act of it is very good at reducing stress levels, and yeah, but obviously you have to know what you're doing. But yeah, it's a good thing to be able to just go out and just have that freedom to go out and make your own medicine. So then how do we integrate herbal medicines into our daily life? How do we actually implement all this information? We create a balanced routine. So they do become part of your routine. Like I took cramp bark just before I started today. That was automatic. You do just learn to reach for that instead of the glass of wine, which I was tempted, but I thought it's not a wise idea. I wanted to be coherent and clear, which is often the case with herbs. And they help enhance your overall health as well. They're bringing things back into balance in the body. Obviously, good nutrition and maintaining that we've got everything that we need for the building blocks to make everything work in our bodies. Regular exercise. There's plenty of studies that show that sitting is not good for you. It is good if you need to rest, but we need to keep everything moving. We need to keep the lymph moving and the blood circulating. And then also relaxing, making sure that we spend enough time actually giving effort into relaxing. So other things that can help, as well as herbal remedies, meditation, mindfulness, yoga, breathing exercises, been shown to be very effective. And then herbal medicines, they do become part of your day-to-day. Yeah, and small changes can make a big impact. And as you start to make those changes, you'll start to feel the impact, and that gives you more drive to keep going in that direction and see the changes yourself. I'm not going to read all of this. I'll just let you have this on the slide deck when it comes out. And so we will support your natural well-being. You can book yourself in for a 15-minute consultation to speak to a herbalist, so that you can spend some time to see if it works for what you are dealing with at that point. And then you can also stay connected with us through all the usual social channels. Okay, the fun bit, Arjun. Q&A.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Natasha, for your time and running us through that. It was very extensive and gave me personally a lot of knowledge about specific herbs and their actions and how I might even be able to incorporate them into my day-to-day, because I do find, whilst I love working here at Napiers, there's always a lot to do, and you're kind of going day-to-day. They end up rolling into each other and you don't take time to sort of look after yourself and just have a break sometimes, which I think is very important. So without further ado, what we'll do is we'll get straight into some of the questions which we had received from before the webinar, and then we'll run through some of our viewers' questions that we've got during the webinar as well. So the first one for you is, what can I take daily for my anxiety? So you've also given quite a good list there throughout the talk, but is there anything specifically that you would recommend as a, not just herbs, maybe some supplements as well, potentially?
Yeah, I would definitely be looking at nutrition there, because I don't know this person and I don't know enough about their situation. I would say magnesium and a decent multivitamin with good levels of B vitamins, but then chamomile for most people, unless some people are allergic to chamomile, so you have to be careful. Again, it comes down to that individual and personalized medicine, but yeah, that would be my safest herb.
Brilliant, fantastic. I think just on the point about magnesium, to talk a bit more about it, is that it is a relaxant, but also very good at helping to regulate the sleep cycle. So both in tandem will really help you to deal with one of the main issues that people face with stress and anxiety, which is lack of sleep or trouble sleeping as well. Question number 2: why does stress and anxiety influence so much the way we eat, either overeating or undereating?
Oh, good question. That's comfort factor, isn't it? I suppose when we're really, it depends on the person. Some people, when they're really stressed, will eat to feel good. I think it's to do with the mouth feel. And then other people will forget to eat. They don't feel hungry. Yeah, it really does come down to the individual again. I feel kind of bad saying that, but it's true.
Question number 3: what can be done for someone to relax when they are in fight or flight mode constantly? So not just when it's an acute situation where you can maybe take a step back and do some breathing exercises or perhaps look at something else, but when you're constantly in that fight or flight mode.
So if you're getting into like a panic attack state, then you need to feel grounded. So there's various things that you can do. You can look for a particular color in a room to get grounded. Oh, there's the yellows, there's the blues, or here's my hands. My hands are real, they're here. So it's trying to bring yourself back into a grounded state and finding something that feels familiar.
Excellent advice. Brilliant, fantastic. Question number 4, so a little bit more specific here. Which herbs can help ease executive dysfunction related to ADHD stress? So I don't know a lot about it myself, but is that, this question for you, is that stress related to overworking of the mind?
Yeah, so overworking of the mind is quite a common thing that starts to happen if you're an overthinker. With ADHD, that's a different pattern of dopamine and cortisol. Dopamine and serotonin. So that's a lot deeper question. Yeah, that's not an easy one to answer in a couple of minutes, to be honest.
No worries, that's absolutely fine. Question number 5: can you make any general recommendations for reducing stress, promoting calm whilst going through IVF?
Oh, that's an interesting one. When it comes to fertility and things like IVF, the biggest thing is to try and get the nervous system to relax. So going through IVF, I'm going to go back to good old chamomile. I want to be able to give you more for that. Yeah, that's not quite at the back of my brain, but oh, regulating blood sugar levels are often the case that need to be done there.
Brilliant, fantastic. Thank you very much. Question number 6. Stress removes my motivation and ambition. Is there anything I can take to feel more resilient?
More resilient. That's building up your own self-care and looking at self-worth. And just resilience comes from knowing that you are good enough.
Fantastic, very nice answer. Question number 7. Is ingesting any of the lavender plant helpful for anxiety? So that's a question about whether you eat the whole of the lavender plant, or if it's just the flowers, or is it best to take it as a tea, or smell it as an essential oil? What's the best way to take lavender?
Lavender's a really interesting one. For me, it's primarily about the smell and hitting the olfactory receptors, which is a direct route into the nervous system. That's mostly because I haven't done that much investigation. I haven't made lavender shortbread and tested it. So for me, it would be about smell. And, sort of lavender oil on the pillow. Unless you have pets, you have to be careful with essential oils and pets.
Excellent, good to know. Question number 8. Are there any herbs you'd recommend for adjusting to coming off antidepressants, particularly to cope with anxiety?
Okay, so obviously coming off antidepressants has to be done with a professional and need to be tapered. It depends which antidepressant, which mechanism of action is going on. So again, that's another complex one about brain chemistry. I would be looking at magnesium again, and probably talking therapies, because there was a reason why you were on antidepressants in the first place. Talking therapies are very important. I know that we don't always have the access we would like to. You can always come and see a herbalist and chat it through.
Brilliant. Yeah, I think on that point, it's important to note that a herbalist isn't just going to, as we touched on before, isn't just going to look at your physiological issues or symptoms. They're going to look at your psychological issues and history as well. So often people wonder what exactly happens in a herbal consultation, and it is really holistic. And I'm not just saying that. I think it's definitely worth you guys booking in for a 15-minute consultation just to see what a herbal consultation, even just a snippet of it, might look like. But yeah, that'll be fantastic for that. Let's have a look here. So question number 9: what are the best herbs to grow at home for supporting stress and anxiety?
I think just growing the herbs at home will be helping you, bringing something into the world for fruition and nurturing something that isn't just your work or your stresses. You're actually nurturing something and bringing it through for your own ingestion. Which herbs would I use? Are we talking culinary herbs? I suppose we are to a degree.
Yeah, so I suppose whichever ones are quite easy to maybe grow at home. So I suppose if someone wanted to pick up some peppermint leaves, that could be quite a nice one to grow at home, and obviously you'd get a nice cup of tea at the end of the day, which, whilst maybe not the same effect on the body as chamomile, but will still be quite a nice way of ending the day and knowing that your hard work has made that cup of tea. Something along those lines, I suppose, would be quite.
Yeah, and also lemon balm. Lemon balm grows very, very well. So does peppermint. They almost become invasive once you put them in the ground. You really want to put them in a pot, but lemon balm would be because then you're keeping the aromatics, you're keeping them fresh, and then you're getting it straight into your cup of tea.
Fantastic. So yeah, maybe keep them in the pot so you don't blame Napiers when your garden's overflowing with peppermint and lemon balm. Question number 10: how to relax the stomach and digestive system when stress can cause discomfort? So they're obviously very directly linked, and we know there's lots of research around the gut-brain axis. Are there herbs specifically that you would recommend to calm that down, or perhaps probiotics? I don't know if that is a way of doing it as well. But yeah, what are your thoughts on that, Sasha?
So my general go-to for that would be, without knowing fully why the digestion is gone off on tangent, and that could be dietary as well as stress. There could be all sorts of things. There could be intolerances. It would be peppermint. Peppermint is known to relax the whole of peristalsis. If you go into hospital, you're quite often given peppermint oil capsules, and so peppermint tea would be my way.
Fantastic. And I've got now questions. So that was all of the questions that we added in and summarised. We'll now go through a few of the questions that we've just received today. I awaken with acute anxiety and depression at around 7 a.m. It lasts for several hours and then wears off. Any suggestion? I'm a night owl, bedtime from 1 till 9 a.m. So yeah, that's the question. So it's a little bit specific, but I guess the main point is the anxiety is quite acute and it's sort of interrupting the morning of their day, just where they're not quite maybe at their sort of peak levels.
So that's an interesting one because that's to do with cortisol. Some people are naturally night owls, some people are naturally morning people, morning larks. So cortisol wakes you up in the morning. If you get and it should just be fairly gentle that it wakes you up. If you're getting a jolt like that, there's too much cortisol happening. And some people become night owls because of cortisol. So the cortisol is more in the evening instead of the morning. So it's cortisol dysregulation is what's going on there.
Okay, fantastic. And so this was a question in relation to the different forms or ways of taking herbs. How about overnight? Are strong herbal infusions the best for maximum bioavailability?
For taking them in the evening?
Yes, yeah. So if you're taking them before bed, is it best to take it as a tincture or best to take it as a herbal tea, as a strong infusion?
Very simply, that is going to, if you're taking too much tea before bed, your blood is going to get fuller and it's going to wake you up. So I tend to go for tinctures at night. Very, very simple.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense as well. I've had that before, where you think you're doing yourself a good thing by taking a herbal tea, and then suddenly you're awake at 2 a.m. Brilliant. Are there different benefits from herbal teas made from fresh or dried herbs, and are there recommended limits on the amount of herbal tea that is safe to drink?
That's a very good question. You're really gung-ho for herbs and you're taking 10 cups of tea. You're going to feel that you're going to have to go to the toilet a lot. So when it comes to fresh or dry, it really does depend on the herb. There are some herbs that are better dried than they are fresh. It doesn't happen very often because most of the time we go for fresh because of the aromatics, but there are a fair few that are better dried. And what was the end of the question?
It was about are there recommended limits on the amount of herbal tea? Is it safe to drink? So I guess if you're taking it as an infusion, should you limit yourself to 3 cups a day, or if you're looking to spread and limit your anxiety or stress, can you take as many as you need?
So it would be, I would say for most people, it would be 3 to 4 cups a day. For things like if you're using teas for like for an infection, like a urinary tract infection, which is a good way to get the antibacterial herbs into you, then I would look at 5 times, maybe 6 times a day, but maybe not big cups. You can overdo herbs. Dosages are really important. So yeah, I wouldn't be in general, I wouldn't be taking more, say, than we'll go back to the generic chamomile tea. I wouldn't take more than 4 cups of that a day.
Fantastic. Great. Next question is: do you have any views on the use of shilajit for stress? So the shilajit is actually something I've seen popping up a lot more and more in the UK now. I think it's having a bit of a viral moment. It's not something that I know a lot about, but is it something that you're familiar with, Natasha?
I'm familiar with it in terms of people using it a bit more, but I actually haven't done a great big deep dive. That's the one that comes out of the rocks, isn't it? It's a really ancient.
That's correct. Yes, yeah. I think it's quite ancient, and it's primarily used in sort of, South Asia and India and Bangladesh, those sorts of regions. And I think it's made its way over to the UK now. It's a bit. I don't want to call it a fad, but it's definitely increased in popularity.
I mean, as we get more communication across the world, then that's what's going to happen. You know, everybody knows about rhodiola as a Scottish plant in Asia. So I think it's quite good that we're having this crossover. But to be honest, I've not done a big deep dive and I don't want to give an opinion till I've done lots of information searching.
Perfect. No, that's a really good point. And just to clarify on that, we do specialize in Western herbal medicine at Napier. So the majority or 90% of the herbs that we recommend will be Western herbal medicine there. Next question. What about taking multiple herbs like ginkgo and ashwagandha, for example? Is there a limit in terms of combinations of doses for liver health, for example?
Okay, that's a really interesting one because I think that's something that people don't always realize about herbal medicine is when you come to see a herbalist, you go through all your questions and you go off on your little tangents to get to the right answer for that person. But we often do a multiple formula in the bottle. So when you buy your tincture, prescription tincture, it will have lots of 5, maybe 6 or 7 herbs at a time. And we are trained to know what they all interact with in the bottle. So, yeah.
Right. So I just wanted to grab that off the shelf just to show people. So this is our adrenal tonic as an example of what Natasha's talking about. And it's got American ginseng, rhodiola, gotu kola, and ashwagandha. So that's an off-the-shelf blend, which we do at Napier's. But the main thing that we want to take away from this is actually seeing a herbalist, you'll get an individualized blend of herbs. So we won't always just prescribe you those 4 or 5 herbs. You may get a list of 10, for example. If there are other things going on in your life or other symptoms that you're looking to get help with, absolutely, our herbalist would look at those concerns and put together a custom blend. So whilst we do have things off the shelf that you can buy, and same with other retailers and other sellers, really finding something that's personalized to you is important. Great. So the next question here is, my doctor told me a lack of estrogen contributes to my brain fog, poor memory, and other symptoms. Would red clover and hops be good to support this in the form of a tea?
Without a full consultation again, but yes, red clover is phytoestrogenic. So if you know your estrogen is low, then it's okay to add in a phytoestrogenic plant like red clover and hops. Hops during the day will make you sleepy, so that's why it's mostly used at nighttime. But red clover during the day, an old formula for perimenopause, which is when estrogen and menopause, when estrogen starts to drop. It really does depend, because it's not always estrogen dropping. It's kind of all over the place for a while. Then an old formula is oats and red clover in combination as a tea, and no more than 4 cups a day. And that will bring your estrogen levels back up quite safely. Also, the whole carnivorous family, the whole cabbage family, regulates hormones as well in phytoestrogens and phytoprogesterone. And that's really, really useful during that time as well. So.
Brilliant. Very good. So this is just something to touch on, not a specific question, but a comment that we've got from someone is, I find another issue with making my own teas, balms, oils, etc. is sourcing good products and I guess the raw materials for those products. Heavy metals are a danger, especially from China, apparently. So yes, absolutely, that is one of the things. Even for us as Napiers, ensuring that we have trustworthy, good suppliers is very challenging. To get those sorts of documentations and certificates, we would urge you to make sure that you have that before you buy. And any reputable company should be able to provide those. So if you wanted those from Napiers, for example, we could get those within a couple of days. We reach out to our suppliers and they have a very good communication with us. But yeah, we would advise, no matter where you're buying from, always check that you can get those certificates and the right authorization that heavy metals testing has been conducted as well. Another question here, Natasha. I'm conscious of time. We've got a couple of questions left. Are you okay just to overrun a little bit more?
Absolutely, yes, of course.
Fantastic. Okay, great. I've got some fresh lemon balm, thyme, and sage growing in the garden. What is a good rule for how much to put into a salad or soup? So that's a really interesting one, because obviously Monica Wild, who is part of the Napiers family, very closely linked to us, really does recommend foraging for your own food, and growing it is another fantastic way of doing it. So Natasha, how do you judge how much to eat, or is ingesting it different to drinking it as a herbal tea or as an infusion?
It's a really interesting one. So for lemon balm, I would put in maybe 2 sprigs of lemon balm. But for a tea, you would only probably put in half a sprig. I'm just going to use that as a measurement. It's not very, but you know, something that's grown about that long, about half of that for a tea, and maybe 2 of those for a soup. For thyme is extremely strong, so I wouldn't put much more than a few leaves from that sprig into something. Otherwise, you're going to overpower the flavor. And the other one was mint, wasn't it?
Sage.
Sage. Ah, now sage is an interesting one. Sage helps with hot flushes. And again, it would overpower food unless you really like the flavor. So I would put in about 5 leaves, maybe 4, 3, depending on your taste profile, what you want from it.
Fantastic. Good to know. Can a herbal foot bath be effective with the reduction of anxiety and stress? What could be used for that? If so, herb and essential oil wise?
That's a really interesting one. So there was a French herbalist, Maurice Mesnier, who did everything through foot baths. So foot baths are fantastic. And also that's a great level of self-care. You know, you're going to make the foot bath. It's another ritual and showing that you're going to look after yourself. Again, I wouldn't put too much in of your herbs to begin with. See how your body reacts. You know, the old remedy of putting onion on your or garlic on your feet at night.
Yes, whilst you're ill. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, anything you put on your skin is absorbed through. So yeah, definitely foot baths.
Brilliant, and that's a really good point. That's one of the ways that we recommend people to take magnesium as well, is either as a cream or a spray, massaging it to the feet. Again, your body will absorb that transdermally, but also it's the process of massaging your feet, as Natasha has rightly said, will help your body to relax and trigger memory pathways and stuff to say, right, now's the time to wind down, it's bedtime. And yeah, that's a really nice way of ending a long day, and yeah, bit of self-care. How to get more deep sleep. My Fitbit informs me that most of my sleep is light sleep.
That is a very interesting one. It's making sure your room is dark, especially at this time of year. Noise pollution. Is there anything that's whirring in the room? For me, is there a dog moving on the bed, scratching itself at a certain time? Is the cat coming in? In order to get deep sleep, it's meditation beforehand. It's thinking, it's the herbs, to try and keep that deep sleep going. Magnesium, and if needs be, oh, I've forgotten the name of it. There's another melatonin, and making sure that you've got all those things in place.
Brilliant. And on that point, is it important to get enough daylight as well to help regulate the circadian rhythm as well? So not just about having a dark room, but make sure you're trying to get enough sunlight during the day so your body's getting what it needs as well in terms of vitamin D as well.
Exactly. Yes, good point. And also fresh air.
Fresh air as well. Okay,
fantastic. Getting good exercise during the day to help sure your body gets restorative sleep.
Brilliant. So last two. So ending on a slightly fringe question, I would suggest for Napier's. What are your thoughts on cannabis as well? So obviously we wouldn't sell it in store or anything like that, or online. We don't do any CBD products either, unfortunately. But yeah, what are your thoughts on cannabis?
Obviously, CBD is legal, and that's perfectly acceptable to use. Cannabis itself is illegal. I have to put that in. As a plant, whether it's legal or illegal, it is very useful, and it can be useful for stress. I think if there's overuse, then you can go into a different aspect. It can lower blood sugar levels, so it's dysregulating blood sugar levels. On the whole, it can be very, very useful if it's kept at the right dose. Like everything else, it has to be the right dose. CBD is very useful for anxiety and relaxing muscles. It definitely has its place.
Great, thank you very much. And the final question, is lemon balm and ashwagandha interdicted for an underactive thyroid? I think probably that one we would have to go away and look specifically at your health situation, but unless Natasha can answer it now, I'll just leave that to you.
Lemon balm is something that you shouldn't take whilst there are thyroid issues. Ashwagandha, I'm not aware of, but I would be avoiding lemon balm while there's thyroid issues. And again, yeah, you would have to have that individual have a full consultation to know exactly why the thyroid is out of whack, and then regulate that back into where it should be. Then you could have the lemon balm once it's back where it should be.
Brilliant, fantastic. Well, I think that is all of the questions that were covered. If there were any that were missing, we'll do our best to get back to you guys after the webinar, maybe in the webinar wash up, and when we send the link out, we can answer a few more of those. But I would just like to say thank you so much to Natasha for giving her time and knowledge to us this evening, and thank you all for joining us about this webinar. Hopefully, it does give you some insights into which herbs and the types of routines and actions that you can take at home to help lower your stress and anxiety